what it do, baby? Welcome, guys, to the 30-minute podcast. My name is Tito. I am your host on this podcast where for 30 minutes, thereabouts, I talk about things that are on my mind, things that I see on the internet, things that I discuss with my friends, that kind of thing. And sometimes I tie these things to the Christian faith. And boy, do I have an interesting episode for you guys today. First of all, I actually have gist. I rarely ever have gist on this podcast. So today is actually Sunday, the 12th of November, and GT Fashion Weekend is happening right now. I'm actually coming from that. Today is day 2, so it was yesterday, Saturday, and today Sunday. So I'm coming from that. And what's up with GT and the fashion community in Lagos, like fashion influencers? Because yesterday, day 1, my timeline was bare. I saw nothing about GT Fashion Weekend on my timeline on Instagram. So that's part of like why I actually went today to go and see what was happening, because since I didn't see it on Instagram, and I went really early, and the fashion show and all that doesn't really pop off up until later in the day, like around 4ish onwards, right, when the sun starts to go down. And I went like around 11 a.m. just after church, and it just, I mean, not that it was scanty, but I just didn't see the normal fashion influencers that I tend to see whenever I go each year. I don't go and I don't stay long. I prefer GT food and drink because food and drink is my thing. Fashion is not really my thing. But boy, I do love watching the fashionable people at GT Fashion Weekend. You just get to see so many fashion statements at that place. It's great if you're a people watcher. If you like watching people, GT Fashion Weekend is the place to be, honestly. I think I stayed a little over an hour because I didn't want to get stuck in traffic. But yeah, I'm just wondering what's up with the fashion community, particularly the online fashion community and the influencers in the fashion community and GT. I think GT didn't reach out to them to invite them for this and just didn't like send them gift boxes and all that kind of stuff that they used to do in the past. And I think as a result, judging by what I'm seeing on Instagram, the event isn't really popping this year. Yeah. If you have inside gist on that, please let me know. Send me a message because I'm so curious. GT, please do better next year. Holla at the fashion influencers, the big names, you know. I mean, I kept on checking Jay on Air, Ekio Gumbo, and Stephen Chooks, because these are fashionable people and they go for these things. They went for Lagos Fashion and Design Week, which was a couple of weeks ago. So I followed that event because of them or through their Insta stories. But this one, it's like crickets, man. But like I said, I went today and it looked good. I actually saw some things that I liked, and but it's just not different. It's just not the same when it's not popping off on social media. Anyway, that's the gist. Let's get to today's topic, and today's topic is really a good one. November is Men's Mental Health Month, in case you didn't know, and Sunday, the 19th, 7 days from today, actually. But you guys are probably listening to this in the middle of the week, right? This coming Sunday, essentially, is International Men's Day. So be sure to treat the men in your life well, say something nice to them, compliment them, make them feel special on International Men's Day. They'll appreciate it. Men work very hard. It's one of the most challenging assignments in life to be a man. When you think about it, especially if you're a man and you're listening to this, you would know. So it's not easy, essentially. So any opportunity that we have to appreciate the men in our lives, I think we should grab it and we should make the most of it and appreciate the men in our lives, essentially. So that's next week, Sunday. But like I said, this month is Men's Mental Health Month. So I wanted to do an episode today this week on men, essentially, and preferably on mental health, men's mental health. So on my Insta stories, I put up a Q&A thing. I asked for topics, for people to send me topics, and I got a few good ones, right? Some of which I'll be addressing or using as my topics in future episodes. But today's episode was one of the suggestions from a friend of mine from that Q&A on my Insta stories. And the topic, word for word, how she phrased it is men's mental health. Hard guy no dey pay. Stop suffering in silence. And this was a suggestion from my friend Zelda, who is actually a medical doctor. And so she's into all this mental health stuff on a professional level. And I just love the title. And it's a very meaty, very strong topic. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Men's mental health. Hard guy no dey pay. Stop suffering in silence. And yeah, before we do dive into the topic, I did say I, I went to GT Co Fashion Weekend. So hence the two. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, I have 2 bottles of GT Co water, which is one of the awesome things about their events, their food and drink event and their fashion events. They always share free water. So I grabbed a couple and I'm drinking water today instead of my normal orange juice. I guess it's in line with mental health. Well, health generally. Water is good for you. Before we do dive into the topic, guys, please do me a favor. You know the drill. If you've been listening to my podcast long enough, please do me a favor and share this podcast or this episode with anyone who you feel will enjoy it, anyone who you feel will benefit from it. Please remember this at the end of the podcast, because by the end of this podcast, I anticipate you would have had a good time. So once you have that feeling, or even if you don't, be sure to share this podcast or this episode with somebody that you feel will benefit from it, and review the podcast if you're listening on a podcast platform, and rate the podcast with as many stars as possible. Now, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube where the magic happens, be sure to like the video by clicking on the like button, and subscribe to my channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button, and share the video there as well. You can share on YouTube. Cheers, quick sip of water, then we will begin with today's topic, which I'm truly very excited about. Nothing quite like water, to be honest. All right, so like I said, November, Men's Mental Health Month. I've told you the topic. A good place to start this week's episode will be on defining, or will be to define, what mental health is. Because it's a term that we throw around a lot, yeah? But if I was to ask some of you that, what is mental health? Define it. You'd struggle. I struggled as well before I actually went to go and Google the definition of mental health, rather. Mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stress. And this is a definition from the WHO. Another definition says that mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. And it also determines how we handle stress. And this is from the CDC. That's the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So really, mental health is about well-being and the things that enable us to cope with the stress, or the stress. Stress is a proper word. The stress and the tough things, or aspects rather, of life. That's what mental health is essentially about. Now, men's mental health is essentially mental health as it relates to the things that affect men and how men react to the things that affect us, essentially. Some interesting statistics that may surprise you. Let me share some of those with you. First of all, nearly 1 in 10 men experience depression or anxiety on a daily basis, but less than half of those men will ever seek treatment. And this brings us to the part of the title of this episode: Stop Suffering in Silence. Men, and I'm sure, well, even if you're a woman listening to this episode, you know that men are quite reluctant to open up about their problems, to be vulnerable, to talk about the things that are bothering us. Yeah, we're quite reluctant to do that. And largely it's because, through the years, decades, centuries, whatever, the notion has been men should man up. They shouldn't show weakness. They shouldn't. That's the thing. Opening up, talking about your problems, being vulnerable, when a man does it, it seems as if it's associated with weakness. And men don't want to look weak, because the stereotype or the mindset is that men shouldn't look weak or shouldn't be weak. So basically, when men are going through things, the mantra or the philosophy is that we should just, brush off our shoulders, just, toughen up, man up, and just, deal with it, essentially. And it's that kind of thinking that has made lots of men suffer in silence. Believe it or not, there are lots of men that are going through things today and have been going through things for years and years, because the world's idea, the world has said that men should not open up. Now, why don't men open up, right? Let's quickly look at that. According to OrlandoHealth.com, Seeking help may be viewed as weakness, leading men to be hesitant to seek psychiatric help. Difficulty expressing emotion is another reason why men choose not to seek help, right? Men may struggle to verbalize their feelings or share them with others, coupled with the ingrained belief that they should man up. And like I said, this is according to OrlandoHealth.com. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's painful that many men want to open up. They want to look for solutions to their problems, or they just want to share their problems just to get the load off their chest, or the burden off themselves. But the world has put it in our minds that doing that is a sign of weakness, and it's very unfortunate. Let me try and bring this home and talk about myself and how I deal with challenges that I face. And I'm going to be somewhat vulnerable with you guys. And this is also the thing. I do a podcast where, if you've been following since season 1, you'll notice that I talk a lot about emotions and feelings and vulnerability and things like that, things that men typically don't open up about or talk about. So I do get the whole vulnerability thing, and how opening up can be viewed as a sign of weakness. Because sometimes when I share on the podcast, I do feel like I'm sharing too much, or I'm not being a man, or that I shouldn't be talking about these things that I talk about on the podcast. Like, I remember when I was talking about friendship in season 1, I really enjoyed doing that episode. I really researched the heck out of that episode, it was based on the friendship recession. And I remember thinking that is this something that I should be talking about? Like, the fact that it's hard for me to make friends. I don't have that many friends. It's tough to make friends in this day and age. Shouldn't I just carry on with life and not let it bother me? Who needs friends anyway? Those were the thoughts that were going through my mind around that period. And I'm just making the point, or trying to elaborate on the point, that for a man who has lived on this planet for a long time and has heard that men don't show emotion, men don't open up, men don't talk about their feelings, it's been tough, or it's been a bit tough. Yes, I can say it, I can put it that way. It's been a bit tough coming on this podcast each week, talking about vulnerable things and emotional things. So yes, I really do resonate with the fact that we suffer in silence, and we try and form hard guy because that's how society has said we should handle these things, or handle our emotions. But bringing it back, I was going to talk about a challenge that I'm having currently, and how I'm solving it by myself. I'm trying to solve it by myself. But in the spirit of today's topic, I'm going to talk about how I would I would open up to someone else and be vulnerable with somebody else in a bid to solve this problem. The problem being money and my earnings this year, for a good portion of this year. So for a good portion of 2023, I haven't been earning the kind of money that I'd like to earn. I mean, to be fair, how many people are earning the kind of money that they want to earn in 2023? It's been a tough year. But regardless, on a personal level, I haven't been earning well this year, if you ask me. And that kind of thing has seeped into many aspects of my life. It's affected my dating life. It's affected the way I live. I want to give an example, but I think that example may take a bit too much time. So let me just keep on going, right? It's affected my dating life. It's affected the way I live, my diet, kind of. Not my diet, but I don't eat out as much as as much as I'd like to. I drive by Burger King in VI once in a while, and this year I've told myself so many times there's food at home. And I'm tired of telling myself that. I want to go to the restaurant, or the burger joint, and grab something to eat and quench my hunger, rather than driving all the way home to go and cook myself a meal and to be financially responsible. And it's not necessarily being financially well, it is being financially responsible, but I'm being financially responsible out of the fact that the fact that times are hard economically, and I know that if I were to buy like an 8 or 9,000 naira burger meal, I'd suffer for it further down the road, further on in the week, some way or the other, when when I'm not able to afford something that's more important, like groceries, or to pay like my utility bills or something like that. So yes, so that's the problem. I haven't been earning what I'd like to earn so far in 2023. I'm working on it. I'm trying to explore other options and skill up, and I'm personally doing things, but I have wanted to share this issue with someone. But like many men, I there aren't that many people I trust to tell about this problem that I'm facing, who would A, be able to relate, and B, would be discreet and not share this problem that I have with somebody else against my will. Because I think those are two big issues with men when it comes to us opening up. First of all, it's hard for us to find people that can actually relate to what we're going through, but more importantly, discretion. And this, particularly with women, I'm about to stick my foot in my mouth right now, but here goes. By most of the time, when people say you should share your problems, right, with someone, men tend to think immediately, or first of all, to talk to a woman about it, right? Because maybe women are easy to talk to, but I personally think that women aren't the most discreet people. I think it's men are more likely to keep your secret and to not tell anyone else your secret or the weakness that you've shared with them than women are. I think personally, and this is a personal opinion, right? And you guys can come for me all you want or prove me otherwise. I don't know. I don't have any way I don't have any way to prove it. That's the word. I don't have any way to prove it, but I don't think you have any way to prove it either. So I think men are just better at keeping secrets of men than women are. The funny thing is, and I'm going on a detour right now. I'll come back to the point I was making, or to the example I was setting, right? The funny thing is, I think women are very good at keeping each other's secrets. Women are good at keeping women's secrets, but I don't think women are good at keeping the secrets that men share with them. Personal opinion, once again. Anyway, so this problem that I stated of having money issues, like I said, my first thought would be to share it with, if I had a woman in my life in a romantic sense, I'd share it with her. That would be my first thought. But thinking more deeply about the problem, I think my first go-to would be my dad. Yes, rather than the woman in my life. Because of, like I said, relatability and discretion. I'm not sure if the woman in my life, the woman I was seeing, if I were seeing someone, I'm not sure she'd be able to relate to my money problems as a man. Because money problems, I don't know, for women and men can be different sometimes. There's that, the relatability, but also the discretion. I know that my dad would be discreet. If I were to share it with him, he'd be happy I was sharing it with him first and foremost, because parents are always happy when you share stuff with them. So he'd be happy about it. But he'd also be discreet. I mean, who's my dad going to tell? My dad's not on social media, so he's not going to like put me on blast on social media or Instagram and say, hey, my son is broke or something like that, right? So he'd be discreet about it. Worst case scenario, he'd probably tell one of his sisters or siblings or something. And I don't care if my uncle or aunts know that I'm having money issues, So he'd be discreet and he'd be able to relate, especially seeing that he's a business owner as well. He'd understand the economic situation we're in, and he's probably been in my situation several times before in the past. In fact, I know he has. We all know, when our parents have had had money issues or, that type of thing. So he'd be able to relate and he'd be discreet about it. So he's the one I'd probably go to with this kind of problem. Aside from my dad, and I was thinking about men and the people that we can actually share our problems with or be vulnerable with in order to reduce that anxiety and to have a bit more peace of mind. Because as they say, a problem shared is a problem half solved. But many of us men don't even share the problems in the first place, right? Because we don't actually run down the gamut of people that we can actually share these problems with. And when I did actually think about it, it's a long list of people that we could potentially talk to. Whether or not they'd be trustworthy or discreet is a different story. But if you run down that list, I feel the average man would be able to find someone that they can confide in or share their problems with. And I'm going to run the list by you guys right now. So, first of all, your close friend, right? If you're a man having a problem, be it, relationship problem, money problem, family problem, whatever, the first person or one person, right? Because this is not in order of who you can approach per se. This is just a list of people that you could talk to. A close friend, your best friend, if you have one, a pastor in your church, right? Because there's a senior pastor and then there are other pastors. There's them. A counselor, also in your church, because churches do have counseling units for who are like, this is the kind of thing that they do, right? And they have numbers or contact information. I know they have that in my church, so they're counselors, right? Then there's therapists, right? Or psychologists or whatever. Well, they're two different things. So let's just say therapists. If you can afford therapy, you can pay for the services of a therapist and tell your therapist what you're going through. So that's another avenue. So that's 5. If you have a brother or a brother-in-law and you guys are close like that, or you feel like they can actually help, it's rare. It's kind of rare for siblings to be able to, to sometimes give a listening ear or to prefer suggestions or solutions. But also that familiarity sometimes makes it hard to open up to siblings. But if you're one of those people who you have like that rare dynamic of having a very good relationship with your sibling, with your brother or your brother-in-law, as the case may be, then you can open up to them, right? So that's like 7. Then your dad, if he's still alive and you guys are on good terms and all that, you can open up to your dad. I think that's one of the best options, or one of the best people that you can actually open up to about your problems. Especially if the problem isn't with your dad, or if it's not a family problem, if it's maybe money or relationship or stress at work, your father is a good place or a good person to talk to, especially if you have a good relationship with your dad. Who else? So we've covered the men. Now let's talk about the women. Because me personally, these are the people I'd go through first before I'd consider opening up to a woman. As a single man, maybe when I get married, my go-to, God helping me that I have a wife that I can confide in, who is discreet and doesn't share my secrets with other people, because that's very important, and who like really gets me. So if God willing, God's so kind and I'm trusting him to give me the desires of my heart, if he gives me that kind of partner, she will be the first person that I'd open up to about the challenges I'm having, right? But coming back to the list. So yeah, women, your girlfriend or your wife, okay, you can open up to them about the challenges you're going through if you have a girlfriend or if you have a wife, and if you feel like they can listen or prefer solutions or whatever it is you need from them at that point in time. If you feel they can do it, then there are options as well. Your mom. Moms can be tough. I know with the money issue that I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't have told my mother because, to be honest, my mom, she's not really buying this media life that I'm in, as a photographer, videographer, and, all this content creation stuff. She'd much rather I had like a formal 9 to 5. So with that kind of problem, I wouldn't go to my mom. In fact, there are very few problems that I would go through or that I'd have that I'd actually go to my mom about. I guess that's a function of the kind of relationship we have. Let's not go into that. But coming back to the list, girlfriend, wife, your mother, who else? Who are the other women that one could... A female friend, right? A female friend, a close female friend is another person that you can open up to with a problem. And this is valid because... You know how I said I'd open up to my dad about my money issues? With regards relationship problems, I wouldn't go to my dad. I'd go to a close female friend. Not a single close female friend, a married close female friend. So say, for example, I'm meeting women and I'm like in the talking stage with lots of women, but it never goes beyond the talking stage. There are issues, I'm feeling them, but they're not feeling me. I'm opening up to them. And this is actually a thing that has happened this year. And hopefully I can do an episode on it. I've opened up to them, but they're not opening up to me. They're not being vulnerable with me. I find that I'm the one that is not necessarily doing all the calling, but I'm the one that's doing all and I'm kind of like nudging into the problem, that I had with a woman recently. I'm the one who says sorry a lot. I'm the one who asks if everything is all right a lot. So if I just feel like I'm not getting the kind of energy that I'm giving in the talking stage or in the relationship, right? If that's the kind of challenge I'm facing with a woman and I wanted to talk to somebody about it, I'd most likely talk to a married female friend, a close married female friend, and I have a number of them, right? I have a few of them in my life. And I tell them what the situation is and why I'd open up to those people or that category of people, right? Married female friends, is that relatability, once again, they'd probably be able to relate, from the woman's standpoint. They'd probably be able to tell me that, look, maybe she just doesn't like you. Maybe she has unresolved issues from past relationships. They'd be able to speak, I think, to an extent for the woman in the picture, right? Also, because they know me and they've known me where we've been friends for a while, they'd be able to tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And they'd be able to be honest about it and not necessarily worry about my feelings. So that's why I take that kind of problem to those people, to married female friends, rather than my dad, because my dad may not be able to relate. In fact, he wouldn't be able to relate, right? He'd give me a different kind of advice than what these people would give me or what these ladies would give me. So in that kind of scenario, the main objective is to share, to pour out my heart to somebody who would understand, right? To who would understand the issue and who to an extent also understands me. That's the primary purpose. But the secondary benefit from that could be that after we've had the talk and, she's given me her advice and I now also feel lighter having shared my problem, the secondary benefit of that interaction could be now she knows that I'm trying to meet people, or she knows the kind of woman that I'm interested in, a woman who can, return the energy and the effort or the vulnerability that I show in a relationship. So she knows, and she, how women are. She may, go through her mental database of her single female friends and think of somebody who may be ideal for me. And she may have that in her mind for a while. Once she may think of somebody that may be ideal for me. So that could be a secondary benefit of talking to a married female friend as opposed to someone like my dad or just another single person, or another, be it male or female. I think you get my point. And I make that particular point to buttress the point of there are different problems, or there are different people for different problems. When it comes to us men and the different problems we face, and it's a wide variety of problems and circumstances that we can face at any point in time that can do a job on our mental health, from family dynamics, issues at home, right? And let me even use this opportunity to talk about some of the causes of poor mental health, right? Family dynamics and things at home with our families, like our parents and our siblings, that's a thing. Also, relationship problems is another cause of poor mental health. In fact, it's the number one cause of, in the list that I saw on beyondblue.org.au, relationship problems was the number one thing. Next was employment problems. Then there's stress at work. And then there's social isolation. And then there's a significant change in living arrangements. So these are some of the causes of poor mental health amongst men. Different types of problems: relationship problems, employment problems. Unemployment is also there. For men, it's a big one. It's a big one. Let me not veer off, but it's a big one. Work stress and whatnot. These are different types of problems. Not so. While my dad may be able to talk me through or help me out with money problems and work problems, for relationship problems or relationship issues, he may not be the best person. Like I stated in the last example, that relationship problems, you may find that somebody else may be good or may be able to give you what you need regarding that. So you may need to identify that. There may be, so if you're having problems with your parents, for example, like some serious problems, like, I don't know, you guys know the kind of issues that we face with our parents. Some of them can be really deep sometimes. Sometimes with problems like those ones, it would be best to talk to maybe a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, depending on the nature of the problem, but a professional who can really walk you through that kind of issue rather than, you could talk to friends as well. or your girlfriend or your spouse. But in terms of preferring a solution, they may prefer solutions, but I don't think they'll be able to prefer the kinds of solutions that a professional would, with those heavier issues like, family problems and family dynamics, which can be quite serious and which can have some serious secondary or ripple effects in one's life. So yes, depending on the issue, and I think I'll be bringing things to a close around here. Depending on the issue that you're going through as a man, right? Issues in the bedroom, issues with even finding a girlfriend, and starting a relationship or getting into a relationship, issues with making money, issues with at work, or issues with your colleagues or your boss. There are different people that you can talk to for these issues. And I did run down the list for you earlier, So look through your own list. Your close friends, your best friend, your pastors, your counselors in the counseling unit in your church, your parents, your siblings. Go through that list and think of the people who will be able to understand where you're coming from, people who may not judge you per se, people who will listen to you, because that's a major part when it comes to sharing your problems. Many times you just need somebody to listen to us, and as easy as that may sound, it's really hard. And I'm talking from experience to find someone that would just listen. It's really hard. I know in the past few months, even currently, there are things I've gone through, experiences I've gone through that it's just hard to find someone to talk to about the issue. And to be honest, I know that just talking about it is like 50 or 60%. I know that if I just sit down and talk about the thing with someone, I'd feel much better. But just finding the person to talk to, or finding the time and bringing myself to be vulnerable, to have that conversation with another human being, it's not easy. It's just really not easy for us men. But like Zelda's title of today's episode that she gave, or that she volunteered to me, the hard guy thing, it doesn't pay. Hard guy know they pay. We should stop suffering in silence. I think I need to take my own advice and think of, I do have my best friend B, but I just feel like I'm burdening her with my issues. I'll reach out to her, or I guess when she listens to this podcast, if she listens to this episode of the podcast, she'll reach out to me and she'll say, Tito, what's up? I heard you want to talk to me about some. So yes, it really is not easy, but men, if you're out there and you're listening or you're watching this episode, we need to open up, because we're functioning in dysfunction. It's like you have a car. It's like you're driving a car that is desperately in need of servicing or repairs. If you keep on using that car that is in desperate need of repair, you may have an accident, or the car may break down somewhere on the road one day. The same way, we're going through life with all these hurts and all this baggage within us and all this pain, without offloading it, or without sharing it, or without even finding solutions to these things. If we keep on, in that, going down that road or in that vein, it will tell on us. We may have like a breakdown. We may have an outburst. We may just pour everything out on, someone else. And this tends to present itself in relationships a lot. Yeah, because men, we have lots of unresolved issues that we now take into relationships, and it can now manifest itself in things like obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder. It could also be panic disorder, anxiety and depression. All these things will now come to the surface may now come to the surface when we're in intense situations like a relationship, like you're in a relationship with a woman, or you're in a marriage. And it's really bad when you're in a marriage, because that's when you're in it, and you can't back out, you can't leave. At that point, you now need to try and resolve the issue together. But it's best you try and solve the issues before you get married. but we do see it a lot. Like I said, men have all these issues, all this baggage, all these suppressed issues that they're at the bottom while we're still single. But when we find ourselves in the tense environment, in the tense environments that marriage presents, right? Because marriage presents different things. That's when all these things that were just, they were at the bottom within us, they start bubbling up and coming to the surface. And our spouse, the man's spouse, or yeah, our spouse, you get the point. They are typically the ones who bear the brunt and who suffer it. And, it's now a discovery, not necessarily a discovery, but where we also are experiencing or realizing that we've got all these issues that we've suppressed all this while, and we're kind of shocked as well. But you can imagine the shock of your wife, who is now seeing all these things, maybe resentment, anger, all kinds of negativity that have come from problems or issues that we've suppressed and just kept behind a door for so many years. So it's best that we try and solve these issues before they become mental health issues, and before we get into relationships, before they cause us trauma, and before we cause somebody else trauma, i.e. our girlfriends or our wives, when we eventually settle down. So, brethren, on that note, let's do what we need to do. Let's identify the issues and identify the people that we can talk to and try and have these conversations. They're not easy conversations, that's for sure, but we still need to have them. So as hard as they are, or as hard as they may be, still try and have them. Try your best to have those conversations, right? And like I said, identify the people that you can talk to, have the conversations, and try and resolve these issues, and try and be at peace with yourself, and practice good mental health. Yeah? Okie dokie, that was deep. That was deep. It was good, but it was deep. And I feel like I did ramble a bit, but I feel like there was still lots of value that I shared. I feel a bit light. I've shared a bit, and I feel good about it. So ladies, those of you who are listening to the podcast or watching this episode, what would be really good for us men, or how you can help men or the men in your lives, is to show or prove that we can confide in you, that we can trust you with sensitive information, with things that are bothering us. And so yeah, let the men in your, that especially if you have a boyfriend or a husband, right, tell him that he can trust you with things that bother him or sensitive information, that he can tell you his problems, that you're there for him. You may need to do this more than once. Us men, we need to even with women, sometimes you need to do things repeatedly before we give in, but not in a way like you're nagging or you're bugging them. Just give them that reassurance that I'm here if you need me. If you want to share, if there's something bothering you and you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. Those subtle ways, more than once. I think when you do it more than once, we'll see that, okay, you're actually serious about it. You're serious about being there. And also, try and state that you will be discreet about it, that it will be just between both of you and you will not share it with a third party. Because to be honest, I think that a fear many men have concerning sharing problems with women, and I know I feel this way, is that, like I said earlier, women aren't very discreet. I wouldn't want to tell my girlfriend, for example, or be my best friend about, what problem can I use as an example now? I don't want to use money again. Or about my challenges dating, or finding a woman to date, or to take out on a date, or a woman that likes me. Let's use that, right? I wouldn't want to talk to a female friend about that, to open up to a female friend about that, and then have her talk to somebody else about my problem. It would feel like a bit of a betrayal of it. That is, in fact, a betrayal of trust, especially if I told her not to tell anyone else. But I feel like women, like I said, and maybe I should stop saying it because at this point I'm probably taking the women listening off. I feel like women aren't very discreet with men's secrets. So if you want to gain the trust of the man in your life, let him know that you will be discreet with the things he shares with you, and you won't tell anyone else. You won't tell your mother, you won't tell your sister, you won't tell your girlfriends, in the group chat and all that it will be just between both of you. And with time, when he sees that he believes you and he can trust you, and you prove that he can trust you, hopefully eventually he'll open up to you more and more, And the more you show yourself trustworthy, the more he'll open up to you and confide in you with these things. So yes, so that's just something for the women. But the majority of this episode, like I said, is for the men and for the steps that men can take towards opening up and finding solutions to the issues we face that would help us live with better mental health, or to have better mental health. Wowzer. I just glanced at the time. I've been doing this for over 40 minutes now. So much for the 30-minute podcast. Guys, yes, it is now time. Well, before I, introduce something new, guys, do remember we've come to pretty much the end of the episode, but please do remember to like this episode by clicking on the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and rate this podcast with as many stars as possible, and review the podcast as well. But also, the umbrella of it all, be sure to share this episode with anyone who you feel will enjoy it. That said, here's this week's edition. I always want to say this week's episode. This week's edition of Something New. On this edition of Something New, I'm going to be trying the mac and cheese from Mega Chicken. Yes, I know what you're thinking. They've put me under a spell at Mega Chicken. They probably have. So I was there. When was I there? Maybe last week. And, the food is laid out in front of you, the different options. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. What's that? I thought it was lasagna because it looked like lasagna that Garfield has in the Garfield cartoons. So I asked what it was, and they said it was mac and cheese. I was like, okay, that's nice. So I decided that I'd try it. I've never had mac and cheese before, so this will be my first time having mac and cheese. I've popped it in the microwave. It's still a bit warm, and this is one helping. I think this cost, let me check. Okay, so the mac and cheese cost 1,300 naira. Yeah, so let's dig in, see what it tastes like. And what's in it? I know obviously it's macaroni and it's cheese, but I wonder how much cheese we have in here. I see some pepper. I see like something that looks like minced meat or something. Anyway, here's the taste test. So I'm getting a lot of macaroni, not a lot of cheese. I'm trying to find the cheese. Okay, I think the cheese is at the top. So I've been eating from the bottom all this while. Now let's try from the top. I found the cheese. Yeah, it's good. It'll probably be filling. This looks like a generous helping. This is one serving of it. So, Mega Chicken's mac and cheese. I will rate it over 5. Maybe I'll give it a 3. It's impressive. It'll be more impressive if I, had it with turkey or something like that. It's impressive. I mean, it's not blowing my socks off or anything like that, but it's good. So 3 over 5. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of the 30-Minute Podcast. Happy International Men's Day on Sunday, the 19th of November. Be sure to appreciate the men in your life. Take them out for lunch. Send them a text message. Give them a phone call. Buy them gifts. Let them know you appreciate them, right? And this isn't just for women. Men as well. If you have a positive male influence in your life, your father, your father-in-law, your brothers, your colleagues, whatever, send them a message at least and let them know that you appreciate them as a fellow man. I'm sure they'll like it. It will warm their hearts. Wouldn't you be happy to receive that kind of message? Please do it. We need it. Yeah? And you as well, be a positive male influence in the lives of others. We need that kind of stuff in the world today. Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. Remember to like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all those good things. And I'll see you guys on the next episode of the 30-Minute Podcast. Peace.